If you want to find hope in the end of the world right now, Kipo is the perfect show to watch. Here's why. Imagine if you took the seamless serialization of Avatar: The Last Airbender, mixed it with the musical modernism of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, literally the same exact music supervisor, and channeled it all into a post-apocalyptic Wizard of Oz-style journey, only, as creator Rad Seacrest says, instead of wearing the magical ruby slippers, the main character of this story is wearing a scavenged pair of Converse, picked up from the wreckage of a world left behind by humankind. That is the experience you get from Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts, a sublime little series of which you can watch its first and currently only season on Netflix right now. And if you stick with me here and embrace this new show emerging in popularity, I'll explain how it all builds to a masterpiece of a sequence that's unlike any other I've ever seen. A sequence all about what happens when we embrace an emerging new side of ourselves. But first, a little background, since even the way that this story got made is nothing short of an absolute power move. Listen to this. Creator Rad Seacrest was working at DreamWorks on The Boss Baby, but decided to quit to focus on making his own webcomic. DreamWorks evidently valued his work so much that they asked him to still come to work 2 days a week instead of quitting. So he did. And every day he wasn't working at DreamWorks, he'd get up early and put all his energy into making this webcomic about characters making their way through an inventive, apocalyptic landscape. A webcomic simply called Kipo. It quickly got the attention of this guy Peter Gal, who asked around, "Hey, who's posting this thing online? This is really cool." Well, Gal's the CCO of DreamWorks Animation TV, so he didn't have to look too far to find Seacrest. And just like that, Seacrest went from taking off time from DreamWorks to focus on his passion project, to being able to run that passion project at DreamWorks. Talk about growth. The show was pitched as The Walking Dead, but everything that's trying to kill you is adorable. And that's definitely reflected in the show we got, as developed by Bill Wolkoff. Set 200 years in the future, the series follows young girl Kipo on a journey to get back to her burrow and find her father, played by best TV dad ever Sterling K. Brown in one of his countless perfect and widely ranged performances. And along the way, encountering all sorts of characters, including plenty of sentient mutant animals referred to in-universe as mutes, some life-threatening, some friendly, and many more somewhere in between, and a couple of human survivors who have been living above surface that join the journey. Suffice to say, compared to everyone else who's been living right in the middle of this dangerous world, Kipo, who's spent her life in an underground bunker up until the second the show picks up, has quite literally been sheltered. But her open-minded attitude casts what could otherwise be a horrifying existence in a positive light.
My whole life, they taught us the surface was this horrible place. But look at you.
Kipo's really the perfect fish-out-of-water protagonist for us to follow and relate to. The show represents sheltered life by not only having its main character come from the literal aforementioned shelter, but having them enter a world that is just as alien to us as it is to them. Because we don't have a solid grasp on how this world works, we're just as in the dark as Kipo, and we feel like we're in her Converse shoes. And similarly, the other characters are never quite sure if Kipo's charitable, communicative optimism is ignorant, enlightening, or both.
Eventually your crazy ideas are gonna get us all killed.
You insist on helping and talking. One day, it'll be your end.
But here's the trick. Does anyone want to be the filthy soul responsible for corrupting Kipo's hopeful vision of what the world could be? No, not really. This is the kind of show with such an imaginative proposition of reality that you feel like a kid again when watching it. Within one episode, we gradually shift from Kipo encountering these nonverbal beasts to friendly animals to a young girl named Wolf expressing a talk and I won't eat you rule to a creature, giving us our first inkling that it's not just humans who are able to speak in this world. And then we meet the Mod Frogs, and the world only keeps growing after that. It's fitting, too, that Wolf is the one to first clue the audience into this essential information, because she is very much the foil to Kipo, the experienced one who knows her way around above ground, and is a little less trusting of the mutes around her. So when we see even Wolf be so instantly challenged by the dilemmas her and Kipo face, we feel just how uncharted and dangerous the territory we're entering is. Up on the surface, we're always learning something from episode to episode. Something more about what this guy Scarlamane's deal is. Something more about Wolf's tragic backstory. Something more about who could have easily been a tertiary antagonist gradually venturing down a path towards redemption. And or something more to help bring us closer to finding that burrow and Kipo's dad. And if even someone as seasoned to this world as Wolf believes that Megamutes don't possess the capability to think, and then goes on to be proven wrong in that, who are we as viewers entering this world to feel in any way secure? And really, a show set in the unknown of such a wasteland landscape provides the perfect setting for assumptions and trust issues. For example, we assume that the great timber cat Yumyin Hammerpaw is dead because of how his people mournfully talk about him in the past tense. But in reality, he's just stuck up in a tree. We assume that this butterfly can't talk just because it looks so beautiful and serene, I guess, but it totally can.
She's right.
And that's just from one episode. We're inclined to assume that every mute we encounter is a passionless creature living recklessly in the wreckage left by humankind, but they're not. There are ones who love science, ones who love music, and ones who love providing quality theme park experiences to picky annual pass holders. The character of Benson, for whom there's no deadly situation he can't put on a good soundtrack for, tries to show the inherent beauty in the world-weary wolf is always trying to warn against putting your life in danger for others. And Kipo, ultimately, is always our vessel for recognizing all she encounters on the surface world for what it truly is. Just like when she was first exposed to the sun in the opening moment of the series, she's always the person willing to take another look.
Wait, I can still see.
And you'll find yourself always wanting to take another look to absorb as much of the detail of this world as you can. With a show like Kipo, you get the rare experience of everything you see and hear all working together towards a fully realized purpose and experience.
My father teaches there.
Kipo, how many light years are in a parsec?
It's 3.26156. A message from my dad.
Even if you don't realize it yet, all the work is there. For example, an intimidatingly spiky jacket briefly discussed in an early episode ends up being crucial to the story. Because despite the fantasy elements of this world, its magic is always grounded in reality. Remember, this Dorothy wears something as modernly accessible as Converse, right? And in this case, the jacket literally is grounding the magic in this story. When Kipo starts having pink fur randomly appearing on her arm, suggesting that perhaps she is part mute or turning into a mute, she wears a sleeve from that jacket to cover it. And just to speak to how clever this story beat is, that sleeve was gifted to Kipo by Wolf so that Wolf could keep her own secret from Kipo. And just like that, you have a fundamental piece of wardrobe on screen that serves as a constant reminder of the two secrets that the two lead characters are keeping from each other. Plus, it makes for a pretty irresistible piece of cosplay.
I love it.
Often the reality presented in this show is surprisingly harsh for something that could so easily have been high fantasy, and perhaps too much to bear for these vulnerable characters. And nowhere is this more evident than in the fittingly Lynchian episode titled Mulholland. As we discover via an outstandingly disarming cold open, Mulholland is an entity that feeds off pleasant dreams, and the two aforementioned secrets of our main characters both springboard into two fascinatingly different dreams that perfectly represent their contrasting personalities. Wolf is worried about Kipo leaving her behind when she gets back to her burrow, so she kept a map that could lead them to Kipo's dad, a secret. So Wolf's dream just showcases Wolf and Kipo as this epic fighting duo, perfectly matched, with no differences between each other, that's completely uninterested in exploring emotion of any kind.
Don't get all mushy on me.
Conversely, Kipo's dream doubles down on the sentimentality, presenting an idealized vision in which her dead mom is alive after all, is also part mute, and able to make Kipo feel less ashamed by her secret in a cozy, comforting, almost subtly very special episode kind of way. But even still, Kipo's dream unpacks all of the emotions that she's going through right now fairly well. This could definitely be acceptable closure in another show. But it's too easy, and the conflictless resolutions of both these dreams are directly rebutted by scenes later on. The real Kipo wouldn't gently brush aside the fact that Wolf hid this map to her dad from her, and the real world won't have people so quickly overcome their prejudice and bias towards mutes and accept Kipo like they do in the dream. And really, it is with Kipo herself that the show takes its exploration of trusting the unknown to its most elevated possible endpoint. When Wolf finally discovers the truth about Kipo's mute identity, it's a big moment. It's one thing to form alliances of convenience with the mute characters you encounter in episodic adventures, but another entirely to discover that your best friend might just be part mute or turning into a mute or who even knows. Especially when you have very understandable hang-ups with trusting the authenticity of a close relationship with a mute, as showcased through an expertly executed series of flashbacks for Wolf. Really, cutting straight from these wolves who she thought were her family, about to attack her in the past, to her wearing the wolf skin in the present, The horrifically dark implications are clear. What more needs to be said? So Kipo has to assure Wolf that, unlike her previous quote-unquote family, she isn't going to hurt her. That despite whatever changes on the outside,
Who I am on the inside isn't gonna change.
but it seems that Kipo needs to overcome the stage of downplaying these changes in herself by becoming more accepting of her emerging identity. And that's what brings me to the scene. The scene that I love so much. Oh my gosh. There is a scene in the last episode of Kipo Season 1 that's all about this, and it has quickly become one of my favorite scenes in recent memory. Throughout the show, Kipo essentially has been open-minded about every mute she's encountered, except for herself, whom she hides and covers up. The show makes a clear parallel between emerging mute characteristics and the body changes that puberty brings. But it's definitely even more extreme and goes even deeper.
I know sometimes girls your age go through changes, although that's a pretty big change. I'm not helping, am I?
She's not only embarrassed by the changes to her body, she's ashamed enough to have made an effort to hide the truth from her best friend. All until this one truly experimental and sublime sequence about how our lives can suddenly change, but we have to embrace that change and seize control of who we are in this moment. The scene begins with Kipo finally having reconnected with her father, and her and all of her new friends in this second burrow. But the secrecy of the location is compromised, and they are attacked. All underscored by an unforgettable song. The season began with Kipo suddenly being washed away amidst an attack on her burrow, no control over the chaos, shocked from her senses since her Earth crashed in, alone, helpless, and lost. But eventually, she made connections with new friends over the course of her journey. And in this scene in the finale, those connections continue into this surreal vision where Kipo feels something that she's never felt before, and her friends say they feel it too, from the beat of the music.
Guys, I feel something.
I feel it too! I feel the beat!
No, that's not what I mean. I feel...
As Kipo music supervisor Keir Lehman says, there are so many levels to a piece of music on its own that when you marry it with picture and character story, it can really expand on what you've already seen. You could see somebody with an emotion on their face, but the music can tell you why they're feeling that emotion. And even though feeling the beat is not what Kipo meant when she said she felt something, viscerally connecting to music seems to be her closest equivalent experience that she could use to describe whatever this brand new feeling she has inside of her is. Not to mention how frequently she expresses herself through music during situations that are new to her throughout the season. Whether it's a song she sings alone to herself on her first day in the surface world, or a calming tune for the largest, most imposing creature you can imagine. So, music is what her mind produces. A giant guitar holding everyone she cares about in her life together as they jam out to a little song called Purple Jaguar Eye, while all of them triumphantly embrace the fundamental truths of their lives that encircle them. Wolf's implicitly violent escape from her pack circles her. Benson's cassette tapes that let him write the soundtrack to his life encircles him. And Dave's struggle for control of his own transforming body circles him. Even a giant Mondu confidently struts along, unashamed of her appearance. All of them embracing their inner feelings, except for Kipo. But these friends are there, giving her all the love she needs, and thereby the support system to encourage her to finally accept herself, too, before it's too late and they're all quite literally crushed under the weight of the surface world above. It's an overwhelming sight that's as bizarre as the surface world was at first glance to the uninitiated Kipo. She's used to a sheltered life where, as the lyrics say, nobody gets hurt and she always knew she'd have a meal, until it all went away with an attack, a boom, just like this one. But just as instantly as she's about to lose control, this sequence displays in slow motion the instant in which Kipo finally gains control, when she stops resisting this feeling of what's going on underneath her skin, and embraces it to save her friends and family. Kipo now sees the world in vivid color, and in this moment, looking at how surrealistically this scene was realized, you feel how limitless those possibilities are. When you hear the lyric, "There's no turning back," it's just as frightening as it is freeing. Unlike what the initial goal of the season may have led us to believe, Kipo can never really go back to a sheltered life in the burrow, even if she tried. But the trade-off is that her purple jaguar eyes have finally opened to see the light. Seriously, I could watch this scene 100 times and never stop being enraptured by it. It's an outstanding achievement. The scene captures an indescribable and sublime experience of transformation in a manner that is, in and of itself, transformative and sublime. This whole show is amazing, and we can only hope that it doesn't get left on a cliffhanger. That we find out the history between Kipo's dad and Scarlemagne. That Benson gets to bond over music cassettes with his new crush. That there's a season 2, and however many more that the creators wish to do, when we look to the future and
look at what's ahead.